Hello and welcome to the Ready to Bloom podcast with your host Holly Wharton. Ready to Bloom helps heart-centered women entrepreneurs to overcome their fears, blocks and limiting beliefs so they can be more successful in business. As a heart-centered business owner, you do amazing work. Holly's mission in life is to help you help more people. Help us help more women in business with a quick review of this podcast. It just takes a minute to leave one today over at iTunes. The more women who find out about this podcast, the more we can help women in business. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to the Ready to Bloom podcast, episode 86. This is your host, Holly Wharton. I'm here with today's special guest, Joanna Hennon from Create Your World. Joanna is a channel and an intuitive who helps people access the wisdom they already have within them so they can move forward in their lives. Welcome, Joanna.
Hi.
So excited to have you here today.
Oh, I'm super excited.
Yeah.
This is really awesome.
Okay, so why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about your background and your business journey and how you got to where you are today?
Well, it kind of all started when I had a nervous breakdown. So I was in this really stressful job where like everything was super urgent all the time. And eventually I just had a breakdown. So I had to spend a couple of months at home. And I decided that I didn't want to live my life like that anymore. So I started getting into reading more about the law of attraction and stuff like that, and decided that I'm just going to change things. And I went through this whole process of what that would mean for me. So kind of I started being very aware of situations where I feel fantastic, and I tried to pinpoint what about those situations made me feel fantastic. And I tried to see where those things would transfer to, like what I could do with them to build a new life. And yes, it was a slow process, and there you go. And eventually, I started thinking, well, I'm kind of creating my world as I go along now, and I want to help other people do the same.
Excellent. So you mentioned that you're a channel and an intuitive. Could you tell us a little bit more about channeling?
Sure. So I don't know how correct the information will be. It's really kind of a funny thing to explain because obviously, I mean, I understand it the way I understand it, and everybody else might understand it differently because we can't know, right?
Exactly. It's different, and it's different for everyone. But from your perspective, what is channeling like? Because I'm sure there's some people who are listening who have heard of it, but they're not 100% sure what the heck it is.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's I work with a specific guide, a spirit guide, like she has a name and everything. And yeah, I can't say that I hear her voice in my head, but it's kind of like feeling her kind of right above me. And when I tune into that, I get extra guidance, let's say. Like this didn't happen kind of overnight. I had to, trust in it for a while to get to the point where I am today. So like the first time she kind of appeared in my head, I ignored her for months. I said, no, this can't be happening.
This is not normal. This is not supposed to go on.
And it's funny because like I really wanted to have a spirit guide because it was in my experience. I knew people who channeled, and then when it happened to me, I was like, no, I don't want to do this. This is weird.
So did you make a conscious effort to connect with someone, or was it just you put the energy out there and she just popped into your life?
I put the energy out there and she just popped in so I started doing this intuitive art certification. And it was during one of those sessions. So kind of I was in that space of connection with my soul level anyway. And then suddenly there she was. And then, as I said, I ignored her and the whole experience for a while until somebody mentioned something to me with that same name. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe I should go back to that. And now she's like a good friend. She's just always there.
Oh, great. So how did you develop that channeling skill? Because it's not always easy to tap into that because it's something new and it's not something that most people talk about. How did you develop that kind of channeling muscle?
Yeah, well, it's a muscle. That's exactly the right term for it, Holly. Like it's practice. That's all it is. Like all you can do. So all you can do, I think, is be aware of the guidance. So first, like when I first started, I wasn't doing it for myself. So I would get lots of readings from other people. In fact, I still get readings from other people because it's just your own stuff tends to get in the way when you do it for yourself. But so I'd get readings, and then I'd kind of see how that was showing up in my life, and I'd start to make connections and see signs and see coincidences and all these things, and eventually, like, you start noticing that the guidance that you have inside you, your intuition, whatever you want to call it, like that it's leading you places, and you learn to trust it, and sometimes it'll be kind of obvious, oh, I don't know, like you should take this course, but it makes sense to you because that's what you were looking for. And sometimes it's completely not. Like, you just think something pops into your head and says, oh, you should go to China, and you can kind of ignore that or follow it, And sometimes if it's not too much out of your way, you'll think, oh, okay, I'll follow that and see what happens. And these wonderful things start to happen because you start going with what you know is right. And that's how you train it. You practice. You follow it. You see what happens. You follow it. You see what happens. And eventually, you just develop a stronger connection.
Excellent. So how was it for you making this public? Because I know channeling is something that's, again, not very mainstream. So when you actually went public with your business and said, this is what I do, I'm a channel, I have the spirit guide, how was that for you?
Yeah, well, there's a post on my blog that's called How I Came Out of the Channeling Closet. So it wasn't that easy. At first, I tried to ignore that whole part. So my whole, like, all my emails and all my copy would be like this fluff about, I don't know, trying to explain what I do without actually using the word channel or spirit guide or anything.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, you can imagine it didn't actually do anything for anyone. And as I became kind of, I guess, more confident in myself, I decided, okay, I have to own this. And like, I don't make it weird. So I do work with a lot of people who don't even believe that there is, anything after we die, or there's spirits or anything like that, and they're attracted to me because I'm not kind of going on about it the whole time. I kind of give them the guidance that comes through, and that's that. They can take it, take what makes sense to them and leave what doesn't at this moment, and maybe come back to it later. So, I think I went off track there a little bit.
No, that's totally fine. And now, and I'm very excited to mention this as well, you're also channeling your email newsletters that go out to your list. Is that correct?
Yes. So I just started doing that. Basically, in the past, let's say 3 or 4 months, I've learned that when I connect before I do anything, things are just easier. And I kind of, I don't know, like I've been very comfortable using, this connection with my guide and with the guides of my clients for in my work. And I help people with this, and that's fine. And I use it to develop my business and all these things. But like, I just don't, I have a problem with making things easy for myself, I think. So that was kind of a big one. And so I'm overcoming that a little bit. And I use that connection now for anything. Like, I use a lot of oracle cards. So yes, that's kind of what happened. I when I want to write a blog post or a newsletter, I kind of tap into the energy of the group I'm writing to, pull a card, and that's it.
Oh, that's an excellent idea. I love that. Oh my God.
It's so much fun. So now I'm like looking forward to writing this stuff. And it's great. And, I got so much wonderful feedback when I started doing this, like actual engagement, because then I would ask a question and people actually respond and tell me, how this makes sense in their lives, this message. And I have a conversation with the people on my list, which is wonderful because you don't want to be totally disconnected from them.
That's excellent. I love that idea. I think I might use that for blog posts and newsletters and things.
It makes it fun. You're like, how does this connect to anything? Yeah, okay.
So just out of curiosity, how long did it take from the time that you actually started paying attention to your guide to the time where you felt like it was all working and it was so easy to connect with her?
I can't remember, but it was actually quite fast. Probably like 3 or 4 months.
Ooh.
Yeah, but only because, and it only accelerated when I started doing it every day. So what happened is this is how like I do all my stuff. I do like no planning. So suddenly like I heard, you should start a Facebook group. I'm like, all right. You should do a reading every day. Okay. So I just started this group and I was like, okay, I'm going to do it today. So I dropped everything else and I started this Facebook group where I committed to doing a group reading every morning for free.
Oh.
Yeah, and that's now grown to over 200 people, and it's a fabulous community. I still do it pretty much every morning. Sometimes someone fills in for me if I can't get to a computer or something. And it's really that accelerated the whole process, because every single morning, the first thing I did was connect with the energy of this group and pull a card and listen to when I use Oracle cards, especially when I was starting out, I didn't look at the booklet. So I would take the card and channel what came through based on that card. And so that means I was practicing every single day and then getting feedback on that, right? Because in the group, then you have engagement. And so it was all practice. And because it was every day, it went quite quickly.
Excellent. That's really good to hear. Because I think some people feel like, maybe it takes months and years and,
Yeah, it's a big thing to trust your own voice. I started doing, when this year started, I started offering these readings that I call DIY readings because I thought, I don't want to be pulling cards for everybody for the year, And I thought, what's the problem? And the problem was that I think everybody can do this for themselves. They just don't trust it, or perhaps they just need to go a little bit deeper, So I offered these readings, which were great. So basically, the person would do their own reading.
Oh.
And then so they would pull the cards for each month and do it like a first interpretation, what they thought it meant. Mm-hmm. They would send it all to me, and I would channel like per month based on what they got, and I went deeper.
Ooh.
Yeah, and it was the people that did it with me were just so. I mean, they loved it because they proved to themselves that they could do it, and they needed more practice and whatever. And they had, everybody had different things they needed to focus on in terms of their own development, but they started.
And that's great because that empowers other people to get in touch with their own intuition and get in touch with those messages and get in touch with the cards. And
exactly. And that just makes everything easier because everything flows. Like everything is difficult when you're not listening.
Yeah. So, Joanna, how do you help other people connect with their inner wisdom?
Well, in various ways. I do have a free course on intuition, a 10-step course on my site. So I'm sure my website will be in the show notes. Mm-hmm. And yes. So that's kind of a first step. I use a lot of creativity, a lot of intuitive art, because that's how I started. Mm-hmm. And I find that that's really beneficial for people who don't like to meditate and aren't all woo-woo, because that's not me. Like I can't sit still for long enough to meditate properly, but I can draw mandala. Yeah. It's just a way of shutting down the ego mind, the monkey brain, and making a connection with your soul level. And then when you just draw without judging, without thinking, especially with an intention, like on a specific question or on a specific issue, then you get lots of stuff that comes through.
Interesting.
Yes, that's one thing I use. I just launched a community where we practice just being conscious of what's going on, because that's really the first step. It's just being aware. Yeah, it doesn't require more than that.
I mean, sometimes it can be really hard to just slow down and become aware of what the heck is going on. So how do you recommend that people get started with becoming aware? Because I know we've all heard about awareness, but how do you get started?
Well, it's going to sound really stupid, but you just get started. You have to decide that you're going to do it and kind of see where it takes you. And it's not like you're going to be, suddenly perfect. And I don't think we can actually reach perfection in that. We're still having a human experience here. Mm-hmm. So the ego, and the brain and all that's still in there, and stuff happens, and, there's stress and there's issues and whatever. But if you start practicing, if you start paying attention, then you'll just get better at it. That's what I find anyway. I'm now able to stop myself in certain situations, not all situations, but some situations, or at least not even stop myself, but even as I'm doing something, I know why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm working through a lot of emotional eating stuff at the moment. And, it doesn't mean I haven't actually stopped doing it. But more often than not, I know I am aware while I'm doing it of what's going on, and that's the first step.
Yeah, exactly. becoming aware of something as you're doing it, and then you can become aware of something before you do it, and then
Yeah, indeed, that's the hope. So that's the hope. But the point is just to start and not beat yourself up for for not being perfect right away or not doing a particular day or whatever. Like you just do the best you can. That's the everybody has to just remember all the time we're always doing the best we can. You can't do more than that.
Yeah, exactly. So what other tips do you have for people who are listening today and they want to connect with their inner wisdom, but they just don't know where to get started? So aside from being aware and getting in touch with that intuitive art process, what would you recommend for them?
I would recommend actually that they get a deck of oracle cards because that's really the funnest way to do it, I think. And then pull a card every evening, and ask, what do I need to hear right now? Or what's my message right now? Or what will tomorrow bring? Or what do I need to pay attention to tomorrow? Something like that. And then see how it shows up.
Yep.
See how it shows up. Then the awareness kind of kicks in. So I know people like who pull cards like that and just keep them by the computer. That's what I do when I pull one for myself. Like, so sometimes I'll pull one for the group and for myself, and then I'll just keep it in front of me and, kind of see how it makes sense throughout the day.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, well, I have gotten in the habit of doing annual reading too. And so what I'll do is I'll pull the card of the month and I'll have that on my desk. So I think that's really good to have a daily one as well. I haven't thought of that.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't need to take very long,
Yeah,
People
exactly.
think like, and then a lot of people like things like ritual and kind of drawn out things. I don't. So I'm always looking for kind of the simplest, easiest way to do everything. And I found that you don't need a big drawn out thing, You need to kind of breathe in and out 3 times to silence your brain, ask the question, focus, and pick a card. And that's it.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good tip because I like the idea of ritual, but I'm just not going to do it. So...
Yeah, and ritual also, as I'm learning right now, it doesn't need to be drawn out either, A ritual can be 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It's just, ritual, I think, is just to help you keep your focus. Because that's something you do need. You do need focus. So like when you're shuffling the cards and, and picking a card, you need to focus on your question or your issue. Because without that, it won't work. You need the focus. So for some people, the ritual helps that, you light a candle, you kind of do, you spray some oils or something,
yeah.
But you don't need that stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. It's kind of like it helps set the scene and helps kind of, as you say, get you focused on what you're doing. And especially if it's something new, know.
Yeah. Actually, now that we're talking about it, looking back, I did have kind of more of a ritual to channeling when I first started. So yeah, not for the kind of, I think the cards are a really nice idea because they feel playful.
Yeah.
So like when I was doing the cards, I never had a ritual, but when I started out and I was channeling for clients, I always had this ritual that was, that was kind of set. I don't need it anymore. I can just kind of go into that space. But if you need it, then set something up. But the cards always feel a bit more playful. It just feels like, I don't know, it's just different. Just, you go to one of those shops and there's so many to choose from and just pick the one that speaks to you, the one that you're like, oh, it's so beautiful,
Yeah. Having artwork that speaks to you is really important. So what are some of your favorite card decks, or what card decks would you recommend to beginners?
Oh, I love anything that Colette Reid does. So my first deck was the Wisdom of Avalon oracle cards, because I have a big thing about empowering women in general. And I had just read The Mists of Avalon, and I read that book more as nonfiction, as like historical nonfiction. That story, I think it happened. So and nobody can prove otherwise. So then when I saw that there were these Avalon cards, I got those, and I worked with those for probably about 7 months exclusively.
Oh.
And then recently I got more of her decks. Yeah, I find hers really, really great to start. Well, I think any of them are good to start with. I think it's just a matter of which ones speak to you.
Yeah.
Oracle cards are easier than tarot cards. That's the only thing. So.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I've got one of each. I've got an oracle card deck and a tarot card deck, and I love the artwork on my tarot deck. I love so much, and I want to work with it more, but it's just not as easy for me to understand.
No, they're not. They're not as easy, and there's more. There's more that you need to kind of learn about them. Each of them. I mean, there will be an element of your own intuitive stuff that comes through, but there's also an element of like what's true for every card.
Yeah.
So you need to pay attention to that more.
Good. So tell us a little bit more about the ways you work with people. You've got Magic by Email, which sounds really exciting.
Yeah, I love Magic by Email. It's one of my favorite things to do because like I started off doing readings, just simple readings for people, and and I found it a bit, I don't know, lacking. Not from my side, but like so they would ask all these questions and then I would send them an email full of the answers, and then that's it. Sometimes they'd send a thank you or some sort of feedback, and sometimes not, and that was it, And then you kind of wonder, well, what do they do with that information?
Yeah.
Does it just sit, in their inbox? Does it ever, I don't know, do they ever work through that stuff or not? And I'm really about the process and about the lessons and the journey. So I wanted to create something that would give people the space to work through their stuff, And that's what Magic by Email is. So you send me an email and I channel answers or guidance for you based on that. And then the following day we do the same thing. And the following day we do the same thing. And it's 5 days, consecutive days. Yeah. So that you work through the stuff, and you can let me know, no, this doesn't sit with me at all. I can't do that or whatever. And then we work through that, and we just go deeper and deeper and deeper.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's really intense. So people, I'm actually thinking of offering kind of a slightly different version of it because this version is very intense. So like you're kind of confronted with a lot of stuff in 5 days.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And you're working through a lot, but it's very, very deep soul work. But if you can make the space for that, then it's really fantastic. The feedback I've gotten on that is just really incredible. How deep it is, and how many things it shifts in a short period of time. So
that sounds really appealing. So, what about Dare to Dream Board?
Yeah, that's kind of my latest thing. I spent all of December working with people on dream boarding because it's again this thing of like you do something and then it's finished. Like people make a dream board and then that's it. But a dream board is intuitive art, and it can show you so much about like what you need to do to actually make the stuff on your dream board a reality in your life, or what's likely to stop you from getting there. Like loads of people are making dream boards. They're not all coming true, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, and that's, for me, that's because there's a step missing, because it's not only about making the dream board, it's then going through the lessons, not resisting the lessons that come up, and being aware of what might keep you from it. So that's how I was helping people. They were making their dream boards after listening to a meditation that connected them with kind of their future self. And then they would make their dream boards, and I would channel guidance based on what they created, focusing on what could stop them, what could help them, like what they actually need to do to get there, and why they might not be getting there, anytime soon. so you kind of, and what, or a lot of stuff that came up was also around, you think. You put an image there of a big house, and it doesn't necessarily just mean a big house. I was able to kind of go deeper into what that soul really needed.
At this sense of home, coziness, family, whatever
it was.
Yeah.
So it wasn't kind of about the images, because that people could do for themselves. They could interpret the images, but I went deeper. What was behind the images? Why they were on that dream board in the first place, and then asked my guides, how we can help these people actually get there.
That is so useful, because I remember, I don't know, it must have been 3 or 4 years ago, I created this vision board in a course that I was learning how to teach other people to do vision boards, and it was just all nature stuff, and it was like mountains and trees and lakes and rivers and waterfalls, and I was just like, what the heck is this? I don't know what this is. Like, but the whole thing was nature. And then I ended up moving out of the city to a small town that's surrounded by nature, and I've got that gorgeous nature with me every day. So it was like, but it can be so hard to create an intuitive vision board and then be like, what the heck does this mean?
Yeah, and sometimes it's, you got that nature in actual physical form. The word that's coming to me right now is grounding. So perhaps you needed to be grounded in something different at the time, Yep. And you can't always get that by yourself.
Yes.
So then that might require a reading. So yes, I was doing them for 2015, and then I loved doing them. So I love working with dream boards. I just think it's so fantastic to be working with people's passions and dreams and helping them create these wonderful things, So I decided to continue to offer these individually throughout the year. So it's Dare to Dream board.
Yeah, I like that. And what about the creation space?
And the creation space is the community. Yeah, that I mentioned. So we work around a separate theme each month, and it includes just a lot of awareness work and journaling and space to practice channeling yourself. Creative art, intuitive art, creative project. I channel affirmations every week for the group, and I channel a message at the end of the month. So it's kind of like a group process, a group journey on various things. So February we're doing self-love. So February is now closed. I only accept people at the beginning of the month because I want the group to go through it together. But March will be success and abundance.
Ooh, and is this a paid program, or how does this work? Yeah,
it's a paid program, but there are different price points, so there should be something for everybody.
Excellent.
And I think it's a really awesome space, and I invite special guests also that work on the theme or on something related to the theme, because I think people will benefit from various points of view and things that other people can bring in. So it's quite a nice little space, I gotta say.
Good. So, Joanna, do you have any women business mentors? Are there any women in business who inspire you, or women in life that inspire you? Other channeling women that inspire you?
Yeah, I work with a couple of people myself. I work with Karina Ladet and with Ruby Toad. I'm not one of these people who wants to have one mentor or one coach or whatever. I like to kind of mix and match because I just need. I prefer that. I prefer to be working with lots of amazing people. And then and online. I mean, online there's loads of amazing women, aren't there? I mean, Leonie Dawson and. I'm a huge Jo Gifford fan, so she's for anything blogging related, and really I admire anybody who isn't who's able to lead a business from a heart-centered place, like from their soul. So I don't really go for this super pushy salesy thing. I like a little bit of softness in there.
Yeah, and it can be hard to lead a business from your heart because we're so used to running things with our heads that it's hard to get out of that.
No, it's true. And I mean, we need our heads, right? I mean, you don't want to just follow your heart. Yeah, they're there for a reason. It's just, I think it's the balance, right? Yeah. That's what I do when I kind of, develop new things in my business, or kind of, try to decide on a new direction or things like that, or a new project, a new course. I kind of combine the intuitive art stuff with the brain stuff to have the balance, because otherwise you just end up listening to everybody else.
Yes.
And that's the problem.
Exactly. And following other people's examples, and that's fantastic because you can learn, but you've got to make it yours.
Well, that's it. You got to make it yours. So it's okay to learn from other people, of course, but you have to be confident enough, in hearing your own voice that you know what you can take or what you should take from other people and what you shouldn't. Like what's right from you and what isn't, I've had several kind of mini breakdowns over trying to do something that somebody said I had to, and it just wasn't working for me. Like, that way just wasn't working for me. And I couldn't figure out why until I managed to get that balance back.
Yeah. So important.
So important.
So, Joanna, where can people find you online if they want to check you out?
On my site, createyourworld.me. If you look up Create Your World on Facebook, you should find the group where I do the free oracle card readings. Yeah, I think those are the best places.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, so did I. And thank you for listening. And remember to visit readytobloom.com/86 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Ready to Bloom podcast with your host, Holly Wharton. If you enjoyed this episode, remember to head over to iTunes and leave us a quick review of this podcast. Thank you.